Hi, new clinicians. I'm so glad you're able to come and get into a program in which you're thinking about what you're going to encounter as you move forward. I remember going to one of my first AALS gatherings and think with a bunch of clinicians, and I realized, boy, what a good choice I made. And that was back in the 80s. So you can imagine that was a long time ago, and we were still sort of struggling with our vision of who we are. The we Many of us thought of ourselves as being fortunate enough to have a privately funded or even publicly funded law firm practice for poor people. And that was great. And we felt like we were really winning there. But we weren't thinking of ourselves very much as teachers, but more as service providers. And that was important because many law students had never seen what lawyers can do to serve people who otherwise wouldn't afford lawyers. And that, I think, was a good message to give them an opportunity to do that. But over time, we became more thoughtful about what we could do. First of all, we couldn't serve the public because we were small and we were, on a semester basis, and the summers would come, and this was not something that you could continue to do to make sure that you gave continuous service to your clients. We also couldn't take on a lot of very different kinds of cases because if you really want students to be engaged and have an opportunity to stand in the shoes of a lawyer, we couldn't really handle some of the cases that were ongoing and complex and really needed lawyers with a lot of experience to handle. So all of a sudden, over the period of times in the 90s and the early 2000s, a new thought about clinical education, I think, was happening. And that was, how do we choose cases that will maximize our students' opportunities to learn what our learning outcomes are, and to stand in the shoes of lawyers and feel that sense of responsibility? And how do we teach them generalizable learnings about what it means to be a lawyer in a world in which there is so much inequity and so few people who are getting the kind of services they need and are struggling? And we can do something about it, both on a direct service level and on a policy level. And so we watched as clinics changed. And while we did that, we learned a lot about how to be good teachers, and we began to be accepted more by the academy. We started getting tenure. We started getting parity in our pay. We managed to get 6 credits required from the ABA, so that the recognition how important this is, which, note, is the most credits required by the ABA for accreditation. And we haven't arrived, because I don't think we still have the kinds of things that the kind of dedication that should be in law schools toward experiential education and clinical education. But we're a long way from where we were in those 80s. And I'm delighted that you are our next generation of people who will be going forward and making a difference. And Deborah is a part of that generation. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to talk about what she sees as what's the future.
Thank you, Dean Aiken. And as she said, I'm Deborah Archer from NYU Law School, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to welcome you to this amazing community of teachers, advocates, and activists. As Dean Aiken said, clinical legal education is really playing an increasingly central role in legal education. Clinical courses help law schools graduate practice-ready lawyers who are able to really provide the kind of high-quality, ethical, and justice-grounded representation our clients, communities, and organizations deserve. And it certainly is a privilege to be able to do this work. It is a privilege to help introduce our students to foundational lawyering skills, including, of course, interviewing and counseling and negotiation, and expose our students to legal ethics issues in context. But clinics should also guide students to their own personal understanding of the social responsibilities of lawyers and issues of social justice and equality. Clinical education should engage and serve communities that have been disempowered and marginalized, and we have to help prepare our students to better represent people from these communities. And I encourage you to embrace this aspect of clinical legal education. So I hope you'll engage your students in diagnosing and tackling the most pressing problems facing our society. And as you teach this next generation of advocates, I hope you will help them understand the current legal framework for equality and develop the ability to utilize that framework creatively on behalf of their clients. I hope that you'll teach them to also transcend and reimagine all of these current institutional frames, to embrace different avenues for relief, to create new narratives, and pull together the building blocks of a new legal framework to establish rights that did not exist before. I encourage you to teach your students to think systematically. I ask my students to think about how they can work with marginalized communities to advocate for systemic change and to build power. I want them to see and explore the broader intertwined legal and social issues that are connected and woven into and through the legal questions their clients brings. I know this all sounds messy and complicated, and it is, and that is part of the nature of social justice work. And as you begin your journey as a clinical professor, and as you help your students move from theory to legal reality, I hope you will embrace the messiness and complexity of social justice work and encourage and teach your students to do the same. Good luck.
Thank you, Professor Archer. I got to tell you, it makes me want to stop being a dean and start being a clinician again. So
we would welcome you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good luck. It's going to be a great day. And if you can come close to what Professor Archer is talking about, you're a success from the beginning. So thank you.
Good luck.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.